Alex Theodore Browning was born on September 25th, 1982 in New York City, New York, to parents Barbara and Ken Browning.
Hi, Barbie!
Hi, Ken!
No. It's unclear exactly when the family left the Big Apple for the suburbs of Long Island and Alex became a warlock.
Hi, Browning, the warlock.
But most of his life and eventual death was spent in Mount Abraham, New York. Final Destination tells us nothing about Alex's childhood, but in the film's non-canon novelization, Alex and his best friend, Todd Wagner, spent countless hours after school climbing the enormous, misshapen tree in Todd's front yard, where they played lookout with toy guns and paint pellets. To make the battlefield fantasy feel more real, they'd often raid Mrs. Wagner's kitchen drawers, swiping colored handkerchiefs to use as makeshift bandanas, pretending to be neighborhood freedom fighters. Freedom from what exactly? It's hard to say. Some imagined oppressor, perhaps, like their parents or the neighborhood bullies. Whatever the case, that fighting spirit followed Alex into his teenage years, manifesting most forcefully in 1999, in the hours and minutes before a coveted flight to Paris with his senior classmates at Mount Abraham High School, home of the Fighting Colonials. The 17-year-old should have been giddy with excitement, but instead, he's a bundle of superstition and nerves, scraped raw by a feeling of mounting dread that he just can't shake.
I got this feeling, this weird feeling.
The fighter inside rages against the notion of this cosmic injustice, leading Alex to become the de facto leader of a group of frightened teens desperately trying to stay one step ahead of death itself.
I could beat you.
Yeah, maybe not forever, but I got this cabin rigged to beat you now.
To learn how Alex Browning's world came crashing down and the surprisingly profound lessons that can be found in the rubble, stay seated with your seatbelt fastened and stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Horror History. This is your Captain, CZsWorld speaking. We're looking at about a 36-minute descent into the character of Alex Browning, the death-defying protagonist of the original Final Destination. The current temperature is 71 degrees. Not sure why that's relevant. You can expect a lot of turbulence, but this is a CZsWorld video, so that should not be a surprise. Okay, so the movie is canon, but as I mentioned, there is a novelization which is not canon, but I'll be sure to let you know if I mention any details from it. There's also the issue of the timeline. The film's original timeline shows the plane crash occurring in 1999. The sequels retcon this and inexplicably move the date of the crash to 2000. Since I'm focusing on FD1, I'll stick with the 1999 timeline for this video. Browning was played by actor Devon Sawa, no stranger to the paranormal, having spent much of his teens playing roles in more horror-adjacent fare like Casper and Idle Hands.
I have no control over my hand. It makes me do things I don't want it to do.
Which is just like that time your hand hit the subscribe button. Right now, it's about to happen. I got a premonition. Unlike those earlier films, Final Destination was Sawa's first true stab at a proper horror movie. But instead of going up against a monster or maniac, Sawa's everyman character, the eerily perceptive Alex Browning, must match wits with an unrelenting force of existential dread, death itself. There are a number of real-world parallels to Alex's story, which I talked about in my video last week, detailing the times Final Destination came true in real life. So today, I wanted to focus on Alex as a character. What is he going through as a disaster survivor? Not many of us can relate, but I think there's an important takeaway that many people can relate to. But before we reach that destination, I'm gonna take it back to the day before the flight that would change his life. We first meet 17-year-old Alex as he's packing for his senior trip to Paris on the night of May 12, 1999. Less than 24 hours before he sets aboard Vueling Airlines Flight 180 at JFK International, an airport named after President John F. Kennedy, a man gunned down in broad daylight by an assassin. This sly bit of foreshadowing for the mid-flight calamity to come is just one of about a dozen ominous signposts we see scattered all around Alex's bedroom. As his parents enter the room to help Alex finish packing, we get an immediate sense of their son's superstitious, some might even say neurotic nature.
Whoa, mama, you gotta leave that on. Yeah, it's like, Tay made the last flight without the plane crash or anything, so I figured it's gotta be on the bag, or at least with the bag, for luck.
Barbara ignores her son's nutball idea and tears off the old tag anyway. As the conversation between Alex and his parents plays out, we steal glimpses at some very specific decor choices that adorn the walls and shelves of his bedroom, all of which point to a preoccupation with dark forces beyond our control. We see cutouts of model dinosaur bones that speak to the loss of life on a massive scale, creatures that were blinked out of existence in a flash, powerless to stop their own destruction, not unlike the passengers on the ill-fated Flight 180. We also find a Babe Ruth poster
poster on the wall, a famous baseball player who died way before his time after a long, grueling bout with cancer, and a Goo Goo Dolls poster for the seminal 1990s album Dizzy Up the Girl, a record filled with somber lyrics about fate, existential angst, and a desperate longing for connection. Elsewhere in Alex's room, we also find artifacts that speak to his resilience in the face of impossible odds, and harbingers of a dark gift that'll come to define him as a character. For a more exhaustive breakdown of the hidden symbolism in the movie, both in and out of Alex's bedroom, check out my Things You Missed or Every Secret videos, where I dissect hidden details sprinkled throughout the entire runtime of Final Destination. These details are completely lost on Alex's parents, obviously. They're thrilled for their son on the eve of his big European adventure.
Live it up, Alex. You got your whole life ahead of you.
You couldn't be more wrong, Ken. The hints of impending disaster get more overt that night when Alex's sleep is disturbed by an eerie gust of wind that spins the propellers on his model airplane in a strange disembodied voice that he doesn't recognize yet. As he drifts back to sleep, we get one final sign of confirmation that a storm is indeed brewing. His digital alarm clock flickers, making the time, which reads 1 a.m., appear as the number 180, the flight number of the plane that he's set to board.
Hey, Krista. Hi, Blake. What are you doing? He's the man. The man.
The trepidation that plagued Alex the night before seems to evaporate in the excitement of the trip. On his way to the terminal, Alex pals around with his best friend, Todd Wagner, and his older, more introverted brother, George. Mr. Wagner entrusts the safety of his two boys to Alex as he bids them all adieu on their Parisian getaway.
Alex? Yes. You take care of him. I will.
Once inside the airport, Alex's veil of optimism begins to unravel after a series of strange coincidences. He's stopped by a devotee of Hare Krishna, who hands Alex a pamphlet titled Reality Beyond Matter, and follows with the creepiest sales pitch of all time, saying death is not the end. At the ticket counter, the agent mentions a strange coincidence. The time of Alex's flight is the same as his birthday, 9/25. The flight is also leaving out of gate 46, another sly nod to JFK, the airport's namesake. The former president was 46 years old when he was assassinated. Even worse, his son, John F. Kennedy Jr., met his own tragic end decades later, dying in a plane crash. Later, while sitting on the toilet, the PA system plays out John Denver's Rocky Mountain High, a song that makes several mentions of a fire in the sky performed by an artist who also died in a plane crash.
I've seen it rain and fire in the sky.
At this point, Alex has seen more red flags than a flag marshal at a racetrack. Oops, wrong Final Destination. Alex's intuition is screaming for him to turn heel and leave, but the alarm bells in his head are temporarily silenced thanks to a crying baby and a disabled dude.
That's a good sign. Younger the better. Be a fucked up guy to take down this plane.
But before he can get settled, Krista and Blake interrupt, asking Alex to switch seats so that the girls can sit together. Ever the gentleman, Alex says yes and heads down to row 22 where Todd is sitting. Alex cops a squat in his new seat when the tray table falls from its upright position. He lifts the tray back up and tries to secure it in place, but the latch breaks off in his hand. The fear comes roaring back full tilt now. Alex punches the help button overhead, but none of the attendants bother to answer the call, too distracted by a chorus of excited laughter when the plane achieves liftoff. But the cheers quickly turn to screams when, at 30,000 feet, a severe turbulence rocks the cabin. Bins burst open, luggage flies, and oxygen masks drop before an explosion blows a hole in the plane. Some passengers are sent into freefall. The rest, including Alex, are burnt to a crisp by a roaming fireball just moments before the entire plane blows and every soul on board dies. The end. Or at least it would be if this wasn't all part of a spine-chilling premonition. Turns out that Hare Krishna devotee was onto something when he said,
"Death is not the end."
When he snaps back to reality, he's back in his seat, being asked to switch with Krista and Blake again, a vicious case of deja vu. This time, he leaps out of his seat and races down the aisle to where Todd is sitting, his face sticky with sweat. He makes for the tray table, cranks the latch, and it breaks in his hand just like in the vision. And that's all the proof he needs to see.
The plane's gonna explode!
Carter Horton, the class jock and chronic bully, lives up to his reputation when he slugs Alex in the face. The commotion leads to Alex and Carter being removed from the plane, sparking panic among the other passengers. Another student, Billy Hitchcock, arrives in the cabin just as the scuffle breaks out. Caught in the pandemonium, blocked by this tangle of bodies in conflict, he's pushed off the plane before he can take his seat. Their teacher, Miss Luton, follows the group back to the gate, determined to uncover the source of Alex's distress. Carter's girlfriend, Terry Cheney, joins them, and Todd follows suit, leaving his brother George behind. Another classmate, Clear Rivers, doesn't wait for an invitation. Sensing something is seriously wrong, she makes for the exit too. As the plane leaves the tarmac, Alex explains his vision to Miss Luton, which only pushes Carter into a deeper rage. He and Alex go to blows again, but the tussle is interrupted by a ball of flame that lights up the night sky. The plane has exploded, just like Alex said it would. In the aftermath of the disaster, the survivors of Flight 180 sit huddled together in the press room at JFK, numb with shock, careful to keep their distance from Alex, their accidental hero and sudden pariah. No one says a word, but their glazed eyes say plenty. Alex frightens them. There's an unspoken assumption that he's responsible for the disaster. Despite Alex saving 7 lives, it seems that he's overcome with a guilt that he doesn't think he deserves. What Alex is experiencing is survivor's guilt. This is a spot where I might put one of those definition screens, but if you can't figure out the definition of survivor's guilt, you should probably just get off the internet and ask your stepmom to tighten up your sippy cup real tight so you don't spill. Officially, survivor's guilt is now classified as a potential symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder, when feelings of distress after a traumatic event affect everyday activities, bringing fear and horror even when there's no longer a threat. One of the biggest studies of the phenomenon was, in fact, examining survivors of an aviation disaster, the World Trade Center attacks on 9/11. Led by Dr. George Bonanno, the study found that those who were closest to death, like survivors who had personally witnessed fatalities, had higher rates of PTSD. Some of them internalized their guilt and turned to self-destructive behaviors. Although Final Destination came out over a year before the towers dropped, the findings of the study are universal, and Alex, who did kind of witness all of the deaths, including his own, through the vision, takes it the hardest. As seen when he unravels during his interrogation with FBI agents Schreck and Ween.
Did you take any sedatives before boarding the plane? Or on board, did you take any sleeping pills, any narcotics, any hallucinogens, Alex? Did you take any drugs?
No. I saw it. I saw it happen. I saw the plane explode.
After the interrogation, Alex is reunited with his parents, during which he feels an accusatory glare from across the room. It's coming from Mr. Wagner, Todd's dad. Alex promised that he'd take care of his 2 boys. Now, Mr. Wagner is short 1 son. But there's a second set of eyes on him, this one from Clear, who looks at him with not suspicion, but understanding. When no one shows to pick her up from the airport, Alex offers her a ride home with his parents, Barbara and Ken.
Hiya, Bobby.
Hi, Ken.
You wanna go for a ride?
No, stop doing that, editor. Over the following days and weeks, Alex becomes obsessed with sussing out the cause of the explosion, his bedroom doubling as a forensic laboratory. Mountains of research are piled high, aircraft schematics competing for space with books on engineering, computer printouts of news reports about the Flight 180 crash, blueprints of the jet downloaded from the internet, and NTSB reports on past airline disasters. When he's not wading through pages of aviation material that clutter every surface, he's stalking the living room TV, waiting for news about the investigation and recovery efforts to pull the bodies from the wreckage found floating in the Atlantic. The non-canon novelization adds that he retreats from his parents. Meals go untouched, restless nights are spent pacing his room as the pseudo-memory of him dying in the explosion plays on an endless nightmare loop in his head. You could probably screenshot Alex cooped up in his room and print it in DSM-5, the industry standard guide to psychiatric disorders. It would go right on the page describing rumination, the brain's attempt to make sense of traumatic events, helping the survivor feel that he or she is working through it and maybe temporarily avoid facing the traumatic memories. This study on earthquake survivors suggests that this response can be a double-edged sword. It may help individuals process traumatic events, but excessive or maladaptive rumination often worsens the emotional distress and PTSD. I think the takeaway is probably that there's a healthy level of rumination, and Alex is way past that. On June 21st, 1999, 39 days after the catastrophe, Alex and the rest of the survivors attend a memorial for the 39 Mount Abraham teachers and classmates lost on Flight 180, where he's confronted with the unfortunate reality that the very act of saving his classmates and teacher made him the most hated member of the Voulier 7. Miss Luton refuses to talk to him. Carter does this.
Listen, don't you ever fucking tell me what to do, alright? I control my life, not you.
Carter.
I'm never gonna die.
And Billy is less hostile, but no less awkward, convinced that Alex has psychic powers and badgers him to predict his future. Todd, the person Alex longs to reconnect with the most, can only manage a brief exchange. His father is still reeling from George's death and forbids his surviving son from speaking to his best friend. So the only hint of genuine warmth that Alex feels during the service comes from an unlikely source, Clear Rivers, a classmate that he's barely said a word to through 4 years of high school. She tells Alex that he's the reason she's still alive and hands him a white rose as a show of thanks. The following night, during another marathon research session, Alex spots a notice in the local paper about the Flight 180 memorial service. The headline reads, "Memorial Service for Students Held Yesterday." He skims the article for a beat, but his focus is ripped away from the text by a snapshot of Clear Rivers. Now, I don't know if seeing her picture is what motivates motivates him to grab the old Penthouse magazine. Maybe he was just trying to clear his head, but if that's the case, the distraction fails when he sees the caption at the top of the page. It reads, "Time has come today." And it seems to launch him back into the loop of paranoia that he experienced from the constant signals of death just before the crash, giving him the idea that death was not done with them. As Alex took in the filthy magazine caption, his concentration was broken as an owl crashed up against his window, which may be another sign in itself, considering that owls are seen as a symbol for imminent death by some early Native American tribes. Startled, he reflexively chucks the Penthouse mag at the window, getting it stuck in the spinning fan blades and creating confetti that flies around the room. A single piece falls into Alex's lap, and when he takes a closer look, his heart catches in his throat. Todd, as in Todd Wagner, his estranged best friend and fellow Flight 180 survivor. But if this is another warning, Todd might not stay a survivor much longer. Is this paranoia? Superstition? Is this the universe punishing him for having 3 different NBA teams represented in his bedroom? He's got an Allen Iverson poster, a Michael Jordan poster, and a Toronto Raptors table lamp all within an arm's length. I mean, I'm a Bulls fan, but aren't you supposed to be from New York, Alex? The Jordan poster might be another link to his miracle premonition. Jordan came back from retirement to win 3 more championships, and Alex came back from death after his vision. But the dude is all over the place with his sports memorabilia. He bolts out the door, compelled to stop by Todd's house just after midnight. But he arrives too late, finding an ambulance already outside the house. The knot in his stomach only could have gotten tighter when he spotted the FBI agents at the scene, their haunches raised by his arrival. His presence at another death scene is gonna look suspicious. Clear, who is also drawn to the house, tries to warn him to get out of there before there's even more trouble. But after Todd's body bag is wheeled out, the confrontation with Mr. Wagner cannot be avoided.
Didn't you see it? What happened? You caused Todd so much guilt over George staying on the plane, he took his own life.
Which is an absolutely diabolical way to break news about the death of a best friend to an already grieving 17-year-old boy who actually managed to save Todd's life, even if only temporarily. I know many people consider Death to be the true villain of these movies, but Death is just doing his thing. Mr. Wagner, on the other hand, just goes out of his way to be vicious. I know he's grieving too, but Unk's gotta learn to cope. The next day, we find Alex roaming the neighborhood in the same clothes that he wore the night before. Did he walk the streets all night grieving his best friend? Or did hygiene just go out the window as part of his PTSD trauma response? Whatever the reason, Alex finds himself in front of Clear's house. He wants to know why she was staking out Todd's place the night he died.
At that moment on the plane, I felt what you felt. I didn't even know where those emotions were coming from until you started freaking out. I didn't see what you saw. I felt it.
Clear explains that she can still feel Alex's premonitions, which led her to Todd's house on the night in question. If Alex's character really does represent the idea of survivor's guilt and post-traumatic response, then this empathic telepathy with Clear could represent the concept of shared trauma. For all you sippy cup kids out there, that's when 2 or more people who have experienced the same traumatic stress form a bond together, often seen in war veterans, abuse survivors, and of course, disaster survivors. As you share trauma, it takes it to break it, and nothing's ever going to erase it, so face it. Clear suggests that they go to see Todd's corpse to get a better sense of the death detector that they both seem to be getting signals from. So a first date at the morgue is the perfect way to get their blood pumping, but the voice of the coroner is even better.
Please. You'll wake the dead.
In fact, I think the hook that Alex used to jimmy the lock on the door might be a nod to Bloodworth's past life as a human beehive. The coroner, William Bloodworth, reveals that Todd's passing means death has a new design for each of the Flight 180 survivors, and it's only a matter of time before the rest of the group ends up on his slab. I guess the creepy encounter scared them away from hangouts at more exotic locales like funeral homes because Alex and Clear meet the next day at a boring old cafe. Come on, Clear, I know you can do better. There's a medical office right across the street. With some time to reflect on Todd's death, Alex posits a theory over a cup of joe.
How do we know? Just by sitting here, by sipping this coffee, or breathing the air, or even crossing the intersection that we haven't started in motion. The events that will someday lead to our death 40 years from now, 10 years from now, tomorrow.
Alex believes that death leaves messages which hint at a larger design. And if they can learn to read those messages, then they can predict and maybe even prevent another tragedy. But Clear's a skeptic. She's convinced that if you look hard enough, anything can be a bad omen. But Alex tunes her out in the middle of her rebuttal when he sees another sign. This time, it's a moving bus reflected in the coffee shop window. Right on cue, either by chance or coincidence, all of the remaining Flight 180 survivors miraculously appear in front of the cafe at the same time. Alex tries to share his theory with the group that death isn't done with them yet, but productive conversation just isn't on the menu. A fight breaks out and Terry Chaney goes splat when she's run down by a bus while crossing the intersection. Back at home, Alex slumps on the couch, still reeling from Todd and Terry's deaths, but a news report about the Flight 180 explosion jolts him like a live wire. On screen, a graphic shows the aircraft seating chart with a red line that zigs and zags through the body of the plane in the precise order NTSB experts believe the fuel line blew. The reporter calls it a theory, but Alex knows it's dead on. He saw it happen. He realizes the survivors are dying in the same order that they were meant to die on the plane, and according to this chart, the teacher, Miss Luton, is next on death's list. Ever since the close call with Flight 180, the Mount Abraham High English teacher Valerie Luton has become deathly afraid of her former student. So if Alex is going to check up on her without making waves, he has to follow one very simple rule: don't be a creep. But Alex breaks the rule immediately, skulking in the shadows in front of her house. While Alex safety checks the tires on Miss Luton's car, Agents Shrek and Ween pick him up for interrogation, where he explains the pattern he's discovered.
I'm not going Dahmer on you guys. This just is. There's a design for everyone, and I don't know how yet, but I'm gonna break this one.
With nothing to hold him on, he's released. At this point, with all that's happened, you'd think he'd put a little more pep in his step, but he doesn't really get going until he happens upon a man burning leaves in his yard, which he takes as a sign of another disaster, which is exactly what he finds when he gets back to Miss Luton's house. Alex flees the scene, but not before doing two things that will look highly incriminating. He pulls a knife out of Miss Luton's chest, getting his fingerprints all over the handle, and he leaves a shoe print in a pool of her blood. Outside, Billy Hitchcock just so happens to be cruising past when he sees Alex make his escape just seconds before the place explodes. As the house is consumed by waves of flame, Alex peels himself off the grass and takes off running without a word to Jones Beach State Park, where pieces of debris from Flight 180 washed up after the fatal explosion. He spends some time with his feet in the sand, stargazing, working out his next move alone with his thoughts, until Clear shows up, apparently drawn here by his psychic distress signal. Alex wonders if there's a universe where the Flight 180 victims landed safely in Paris, while Clear shares the story of her father's murder when she was just 10 years old, hoping for her own alternate timeline where her father is still alive. If you're new to my Final Destination content, I've always seen this as a good excuse for the Retcons 2000 timeline that's used in the Final Destination sequels. If we're dealing with alternate universes, maybe there's a universe that is functionally the same, but the only difference is that the crash occurs 1 year later. It would actually be interesting to see a happier timeline where Flight 180 never blew up and Clear's father never met a violent end at the tip of a bullet, but fate cannot be changed and death's design eventually comes for them anyways. It could be a good excuse if they ever wanted to bring Devon Sawa and Ali Larder back for a good old 2020s horror requel. After vowing to beat death at its own game, or die trying, Alex, Clear, and Billy pile into Carter's car, which has the letters RFK on its license plate, as in Robert F. Kennedy, brother of John F. Kennedy. Like John before him, Robert also met a violent end by the way of an assassin's bullet. Why do I bring this up? Because death is dropping another breadcrumb. Dead crumb? And no one inside the car seems to pick up on it.
Please, tell me I'm gonna get to see the Jets win a Super Bowl.
You're not, but that has nothing to do with you being on death's list. Alex shares his belief that they're all marked for death, causing Carter to go into a rage, blowing through stop signs and red lights. If he's going to die, he's going out on his own terms. While Clear and Billy beg Carter to stop the car, Alex experiences not one, but two quick visions, one of a torn seatbelt and one of a freight train reflected in the car window. The meaning probably became clear when Carter parked the car on a railroad crossing and refused to get out with the others. But by the time he comes to his senses, the car stalls and the door locks engage, trapping him inside and requiring Alex to pull him out to safety by ripping through the seatbelt just moments before the impact, just like the torn belt Alex saw in his vision. Billy Hitchcock is not so lucky though. His face gets sliced in half by a shard of metal debris. While witnessing yet another victim of death's design is traumatizing, it does lead to a revelation. Alex reveals that Carter should have been next after Miss Luton, and that Billy's death means that the design was altered when Alex intervened.
I saved him, and because I saved him, it skipped Carter and went to the next person in the path of the explosion, Billy.
And with Billy gone, Alex is next on death's list, so he holds up in Clear's cabin, seeking refuge from the army of police officers that are no doubt hunting him down after the gruesome exits of Miss Valerie Luton and Billy Hitchcock. He barricades himself inside, death-proofing the entire place, waiting for the next attempt on his life. Several days go by in relative calm, with his greatest struggle being when he had to choke down this disgusting can of chicken spread. Perhaps a fate worse than death. But his paranoia rises again when he's nearly cut by a rusty fishhook. Later that night, Alex stumbles upon a newspaper article about a memorial scholarship being set up in honor of Flight 180 victims Krista Marsh and Blake Dreyer, the girls who asked him to switch seats before his meltdown. The article sparks an epiphany. He did switch seats in his vision, but in reality, he never moved, which means he got the order wrong on Death's kill list. Clear is up next, and she has no idea. Alex bolts out of the cabin, but he's immediately swarmed by police who are still looking for him. He makes his getaway in a canoe, hauls through the forest, and tumbles down a hill, nearly impaling his face on a sharp branch. But by the rules of Death's design, Alex can't be killed yet because it's not his turn. But I'd interpret this as not a part of the design for his death, but rather for Clear's, an attempt to slow him down long enough to sabotage his rescue attempt. When the branch doesn't do the trick, Death ups the ante, striking a bolt of lightning into a tree that rips it from its roots, pins him down, and submerges his head in 6 inches of creek water. But he takes it in stride, adrenalized by anger and spite, refusing to give up no matter what Death throws at him. Choking down gulps of water, Alex manages to free himself from the felled tree and continue his crusade.
He's the man, the man!
When Alex finally reaches Clear's house, the situation is dire. He finds her trapped in her car, a live power line spewing electric sparks as it dances on the hood. Alex grabs a shovel and bats the cable away, inadvertently setting off a chain reaction that ends with a flaming gas canister lodged under the car on the verge of explosion. Alex makes a split-second decision. Better for one of them to die than to have Death beat them both. He grabs the power line with both hands, taking on the full surge of electricity, buying Clear just enough time to escape before the car blows. In the novelization's interpretation of the events, Alex is happy in his final moments, with the knowledge that his sacrifice will allow Clear to live just a little while longer. There's also a nagging unease that lingers in his mind just before the darkness claims him. He hopes Carter doesn't hit on Clear at his funeral. But to his surprise, his death doesn't stick. Paramedics are called to the scene, and miraculously, they're able to revive Alex. It appears at first that this is the key to beating death. Over the next 6 months, there are no more close calls with the afterlife, leading Alex to believe that they're in the clear. It seems that Alex himself got into the clear, because the two started dating shortly after his revival. 6 months later, in December of 1999, we find Alex, Clear, and Carter in the most unlikely of places, the cabin of a plane headed to Paris. Carter can now hold entire conversations with them without scowling or making a fist. And I think this kind of goes back to the point that I made earlier about trauma bonding. The renewed relationship with Carter is a testament to the power of these psychological bonds being formed through adversity. Two guys who could barely share a room together without fists flying are now planning an international trip together. Remember that 9/11 study that followed the survivors of the 2001 terrorist attacks? Well, the biggest surprise for the researchers wasn't the dramatic elevations in PTSD, it was their resilience in the months that followed. 6 months after the catastrophe, over 65% of those studied exhibited just one or less symptoms of PTSD. Somehow, even though 9/11 hadn't even happened yet when Final Destination was released, the movie perfectly reflects these statistics. There's a 6-month time skip, and 2 out of the 3 survivors seem to have mentally moved on. But Alex can't shake a needling feeling in the back of his mind. Their first night in Paris, the 3 met for drinks at an outdoor restaurant called Le Café Miro 81. They toast in honor of the fallen friends that couldn't be there with them, but for him, the puzzle isn't quite complete.
The path of the explosion determined the order of our deaths, right? But when I intervened and saved Carter, it skipped him and went to the next person on the path that went to Billy. But in my case, no one intervened, right?
Sure, Alex died and came back, but he wants to know why death skipped him. And just like in the past, Alex's paranoia is more than just neuroticism. His death detector starts to go haywire, and he decides to head back to the hotel alone. Clear offers to go with him, but he warns her to just stay away. Just then, she spots a bus reflected in the restaurant window, an echo of the vision that Alex had just before Terry Chaney went splat in front of Carter. She screams out a half step before Alex is run down, but the bus swerves and knocks a lamppost off its mount, which then bangs into the Le Café Miro 81 sign, dislodging it. Gravity takes care of the rest. The sign falls, slicing through the air like a reaper's scythe. Carter dives and shoves Alex out of harm's way, inadvertently skipping Alex on death's list and putting himself squarely in its crosshairs.
I told you were next!
And it just skipped me.
So who's next?
Just before Carter gets his ticket punched, the upside-down Le Café Miro 81 sign looks a lot like the number 180, another unseen warning, referencing the doomed flight that led our trio, well, now duo, to this particular street corner in Paris. The name feels intentional too. Miro is a Spanish word that means I'm watching. Sure, a French restaurant could have a Spanish name as part of a fusion concept blending French and Spanish cuisine. Both countries do share a border after all. But I'm willing to bet that this phrase, "I'm watching," has a lot more to do with an invisible supernatural stalker than a culinary mashup. This insane attention to detail makes it all the more frustrating that the franchise sometimes undercuts its own potential. In Final Destination 2, Alex Browning gets only a fleeting mention, but it's handled in the most anticlimactic and frankly disrespectful way possible. His death happens off-screen. The filmmakers don't even give him the dignity of a proper send-off. Instead, we learn about his demise from a throwaway news article, which is bad enough. But how they kill off the character that set the stage for the franchise and offered a blueprint for each of the visionary protagonists that would follow, a franchise famous for its absurdly elaborate Rube Goldberg-styled kills, with a brick to the face. Yes, a brick. So what was the point of his death-defying story and climax-defying demise? I think it comes down to our uniquely human drive to exert control over the uncontrollable. Every moment we draw a breath, we're under the thumb of cosmic forces that are unfeeling and indiscriminate. The enormity of the universe makes any one person seem insignificant by comparison. And so we all struggle to find meaning and real agency within the chaos that is life and death. In the case of Alex Browning, his survivor's guilt makes him painfully aware of just how little power human beings hold in the face of our own mortality. And so, because he has this unique gift of foresight, he's able to claw back just a shred of agency in ways that no one else can. Chaos has a way of asserting itself, no matter how much you try to insulate yourself against it, which makes Alex's second sight more curse than gift. Consider how much anxiety and dread he has to contend with because of his forbidden knowledge of the horrors to come. Sure, he has moments of genuine heroism, but is he truly living? In the end, how much did he really change? Alex's true legacy is a bit of a paradox. On one hand, he's a beacon of hope and inspiration because he makes the impossible possible. By temporarily avoiding death and allowing others to squeeze out a few extra days or 7 months of life, he lends a measure of credibility to the idea of premonitions. The visionaries in the sequels benefited from this because it made their premonitions a little easier to swallow, a precedent that had already been set in the aftermath of the Flight 180 disaster, which challenged the notion of fate itself, even if most people chalked it up to superstition or coincidence.
I gotta call bullshit. I mean, I've sat here and listened to all your theories and all your stories, and I think it's just all bullshit.
But on the other hand, despite the best efforts from Alex and the others who shared his dark gift, death still took the lives that it always intended to take, which I think speaks to a greater commentary about how we must ultimately accept that we are never truly in control. Chaos is an unavoidable part of being alive, and accepting that reality is the only way a person can truly find a joy. As for the future of the franchise, it's unlikely that we'll ever see Alex Browning again, given that death eventually claimed him like all the others. But who knows, maybe there is a world where he still exists. A different version of the mutual fantasy that Alex and Clear shared at Jones Beach.
It exists, that place, where my dad is still safe, where he had a full pack of cigarettes that night and just kept driving, where our friends are still in the sky.
No matter what reality you're viewing from, make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell and select all notifications so you don't miss out on more Final Destination analysis, and I will see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.